Well, let me introduce myself very quickly. I'm Dan Sampson. I work for Mass CZM, and we have developed a tool called MORIS, which I hope will be helpful to some folks like yourselves and some projects that you either have going on or may have going on in the near future. Can everyone hear and see me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to give you a demo of MORIS, and MORIS stands for the Massachusetts Ocean Resource Information System. Not that that's all that important, but it's with one R. So let me just pull up my screen here so that I can give you a tour. If I can share my screen now, let me try doing that. Can you all see my Google screen here?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So I'm going to prove to you that MORIS exists, and you don't need to know an exact URL. So if I type in the word MORIS here, we're going to get two things. We're going to get the Massachusetts Ocean Resource Information System and an Argentinian rock musician. We don't want that one. There's also a movie called that. We want the Massachusetts Ocean Resource Identification System. And you'll get to a CZM webpage that talks a little bit about MORIS and has some legalese language, but there's a link here that opens it up. So wait for it for a second here. And this is it. So there are a couple of different features here that I'd like to go on over. First is, this is our home screen here, and we have a map viewer here, and we have a place to download data, and we have a map gallery. Everything is loading up slowly at the moment, which is never an auspicious start to any type of presentation like this. But since it's live, and because Murphy of Murphy's Law is with us, something's going to go wrong. And if that happens, well, we'll just make the best of it. Anyway, so this is what MORIS looks like. And there are three big pieces. There's the mapping tool, which is very similar to the old MORIS, where you're able to build up a map, bring in the information you want, layer it up the way you want, do some symbology on it, and hopefully gain some clarity on a question you may have. We have a way to download data. So if you're a GIS geek or you want to pass some data on to a GIS colleague, you can do that. We also have a map gallery that are some pre-made mapping tools that maybe they'll serve the need you have and you don't have to actually make your own map. So maybe that's a good place to start. So I'm going to click that, and we're going to zip down to the bottom of the page here. And we have these 8 different mapping tools here. A couple of them may be of interest. We have Coast Guide Online, which shows off public access points throughout the coast. We have a grant viewer showing where grants have been awarded, and there's information about each one. This one's pretty cool and maybe up your alley. We're in the process of updating this right now, but this shows where FEMA inundation zones are. It shows where slosh hurricane model data show over land, and likewise sea level rise. So like I said, we're in the process of updating this. It should be done shortly. We have our coastal erosion viewer showing long-term and short-term erosion or accretion trends, invasive species. This is a fascinating one here, SLAM, basically showing how salt marshes are going to respond to rising sea level over the next 100 years. Sad story there. Don't look if you're looking to be uplifted. And we have a mass-based assessment areas here. So if one of these 8 things happens to sort of scratch the itch you have, go right to it. But I'm going to go back up to the top here. And I'm going to point out that we do have an FAQ here. The information help we have is really good. I didn't write it, so I can praise my colleague, Mark Carullo, who some of you may know. He wrote this, and it's a really, really good set of instructions, both here and in another place as well. So I definitely encourage you to read those if you get stuck on anything. And I think most people who come to MORIS are going to want to do what they did in the old MORIS, which is say, hey, I'm really interested to see where, shellfishing happens in my town, or, does an ACEC intersect something of interest, or a wellhead area, or where's the FEMA V zone in this particular stretch of beach here? So those are the type of things that we found people come to MORIS to do. Although every time I think I know what people want to do with Morris, I'm always surprised. I'll get an email from a llama farmer in Indiana who's like, I'm really interested in your Chapter 91 data. So it's like, okay, great. Let me help you with that. But I never know what people are going to be interested in. So we made this under the assumption that people are going to want to do whatever they're going to want to do. And we gave them the ability to do that. So if we click on the view data or make a map, it's going to shoot us down to this point right here. And we're going to have this tool slowly start loading up for us. Now, if this doesn't load quickly, I'm in a whole lot of trouble because my demo is not going to go well either. Fortunately, it is loading up for us, and that's good. So we can look at this two ways. We can either work with this map that's built into the website here, or if we said, hey, I'm working on a laptop screen and I want to get as much screen real estate as I can. You can click on the full screen option here, which is going to open up a new window and launch Morris in it. And there's no surrounding padding on it here. So if you're there and you feel like monkeying around with a copy of Morris as I'm talking, feel free to do that. If you want to pay rapt attention, that's fine as well. Whatever works for you. Anyway, Sam cued me in a little bit about some of the data layers that may be of interest to your group, but if you just for my interest, could you just toss out a couple things that the Buzzards Bay Action Committee does and what type of data may be helpful to you in your daily work?
I don't even know what's available. I can't read that.
I know, well, it's right here. You can check it out. How about you guys, the conservation agents? And
Come on, Concoms. What do you got?
I know I always use Mass DEP wetlands for an idea to get me started.
All right, sounds good. Anyway, so if we're looking at the Morris viewer here, we're seeing a list of data on the left-hand side. We're seeing our map in the middle, and on the right-hand side, by default, we get our layer list. So let's look up wetlands. We're going to go into the search box here and type wetlands, if I can spell it correctly, and let's see what we get. So we're seeing the ocean management plan. We're seeing eelgrass. We have the SLAM data because those are wetlands. And let's see if we can get to the Mass DEP wetlands. So there it is right there. We can click add to the map. Oh, no. Well, like I said, a live demo is Murphy's Law, always going to fail on me here. So let's look at something similar. Let's look at, so we can get the wetlands change data to add here. Hopefully, and add failed again. Wow. All right, how's my morning going? You can ask me that now. Let's try vernal pools here. And let's see, so we have lots of vernal pools. It looks like snowflakes. I apologize. I was hoping I could get Mass DEP wetlands about on here. I'll have to ask my colleague why that might not be working. We released Morris a couple months ago, and we are continuing to find bugs in the data, gremlins of various sorts, and those are the very important things we'd like you to send back to us. Believe me when I say my feelings will not be crushed if you find a mistake here. I'd so much rather.
This is a wetland change map.
Dan,
This here is vernal pools.
Yeah, this is
Mark.
let's take that off here. We could also look for NWI, National Wetlands Inventory, and add that. I tried that yesterday, and that does indeed work. I don't know
Maybe
your
zoom
area.
down into the south coastal. There you go.
Yeah, sure. This is Mattapoisett, I believe, here. So let's see what we get when we look at eel ponds here.
Dan,
Yes.
I was looking at when you were trying to load that layer.
Yeah.
You go back, I think the layer that would load is the DEP wetlands layer, which was right above the one you were doing outlines and labels.
Okay.
I think the scaling might have been off. If you go up to the one above it, it might add.
Sure. So DEP.
It's a DEP wetlands. If you type in wetlands again,
All right. Let's check it out.
I want to make your morning better.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so see where it says Mass DEP wetlands? Up one more, that one,
Yep.
try adding that one.
All right, let's see what happens here. Yay, we have DEP wetlands on here in addition to the NWI wetlands. So anyway, so here are those data. Now, if we want to look a little bit more and say, you know, what are we seeing on the map here? We can expand this and take a look at what the different features are. So we have shoreline, mean high water, mean low water. And then for the wetlands, we're looking at, you know, wooded marshes, cranberry bogs, salt marshes, etc. So we can use this symbology here to see what we have on the map here. I should also say something that's important. A lot of the time, right off the bat, maybe you just want to look at an aerial photo of an area, or this wetlands data doesn't really look good over this base map we have here. So we can go up to these 4 squares here and look at our base map gallery. As we can choose from a whole series of ortho photos, and we can get down to the end here. We have a NOAA charts. I can click on that, and that should load up in a moment here. But in a lot of cases, I think just the most recent ortho photos are some of the most important ones, and they're very nice, high quality orthos. I mean, you can get right into the sand trap here and practically see the lost balls in there. Neat stuff. But anyway, definitely check out the base map gallery. A couple of the ones I really like and use a lot happen to be the wetlands, of course. I like the USGS topo map here. It has a very nice background. So if you're making a map to print off or something, sometimes this has some nice pleasing cartographic properties here. Also, you know, if you're an ocean guy like me, you love your NOAA charts. You've seen those for 100 years, and those are a suitable background for a lot of offshore type applications. And sometimes you may want something real simple, like just a black background to let your data really pop out in front of you. So we have this whole gallery here, and I'm going to move it back to ortho photos just because I think those are interesting. We can go back to our layer list here. This is our legend. If we move over one, we're here at our layer list. We can turn our data on and off here. And it turns out, though, this is interesting. SGS base map detailed features. All right. All right, so we've been able to look at a couple different types of data and load them up here. Let's get a couple more on. So I don't know, ACECs might be an interesting one. I'm flying blind here, so I'm pretending I have not done this before. I haven't previewed all this stuff. So we have
not many ACECs on the. You'd have to go up to Plymouth or Westport, I think.
Let's
But,
forget about
maybe-
them. Let's look at eelgrass.
There you go.
All right, eelgrass, let's add that in. Let's add in some intertidal flats here. Here's our eel. Oh, you guys are doing real well in your eelgrass here. It's impressive. If we want to move so that the eelgrass or the intertidal flats fall below, we can do that by clicking here and saying move down. So for cartographic purposes, even though these are roughly the same color here, we can change the order around. So if there's a data layer that's being covered over by one on top of it, you can flip them. Let's add a couple other data layers here. Let's look at CSOs. I know we have those in here. We have a lot of interesting data, and we've tried very hard to put up data that we feel is going to be helpful to users.
Yeah, if you CSOs would be over in New Bedford. You can see those outfalls there.
Yeah, hey, go New Bedford. And you know, so we have shellfish data, we have wellhead data, we have NOAA inundation data. You know, what's it going to look like when there's 4 feet of bathtub flooding on here? We have the FEMA firm data. One of the data sets that's very new and is really, really great is the MCFRM data set. And that has not been loaded up yet, but I'll show you a way to get into that. I don't know if you're familiar with the MCFRM. That's
What is it?
No, what is it?
okay. The Mass Coast Flood Risk Model. This is a product that was contracted by Mass Geodot, and they procured a very high resolution, very high scale, hydrologically correct sea level rise and storm model that looks at 2030, 2050, 2070. It gives probabilities that any given point is going to get wet during that time frame. It also gives the likely depth of inundation. So if you have 3 feet of sea level rise and you click a point, it'll tell you, how much water is over that land point right there. It's a very helpful data set. I think when you check it out, you will find it to be very useful in a lot of the work you do, since so much of our shoreline is low lying and water can move inland quite a distance, especially up in your neck of the woods here.
When did you say that's going to be ready?
Well, I was hoping it was going to be in this morning, but there is a trick we can use, and I'll show you a couple. I'll show you a couple of other things how we would get to something like that. We have these different groups here, and we can click on any of them, like coastal hazards here. And these are where we've grouped the data layers that we feel are, we've curated, and we put them in different categories here. So like, for example, we could look at the, 6 feet of sea level rise data here, just drop that on top of things. We have categories of biological resources, boundaries, which are very important and very helpful. We have our designated port areas, for example, coastal barrier resource system data, lots of different stuff. A lot of it may be totally not useful to you, but there may be a gem in there, town boundaries. There's just a lot of neat stuff. It can help you make a map that tells the story you're interested in. Oh, for goodness sake. We're just not going to pretend we saw that. I have some check work to do in the backgrounds here. So we're going to do the right thing, just blink our eyes, pretend that never happened, just like that thing in Men in Black, where they have the little flasher thing, your memory is erased for the last X period of time. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone. I see Sam laughing, so I'm hoping it makes sense.
And one of the things I will say is Dan does want to know about these things that, this is such a huge undertaking that if you do find things that aren't working, please let me know so that we can get this, so that it works the best it can. So, and Dan is excellent about, doing this, he wants the best product possible.
Oh yeah. This is a reflection of CZM. We want it to be, it's one of our flagship products. We want it to be good. And in fact, if you go back to the regular MORIS here, at the bottom, at the very, very bottom, says here, report bugs, get questions answered, or provide general feedback to Dan Sampson. If you click this, it's going to launch your email and it will say, MORIS bug report, and you type in, you don't have to be nice about it. You can say your boundary layer stinks because it doesn't open up. And that's just fine. I don't mind that at all. I'd rather, like Sam said, I'd rather know about it than not. But if we go back to this page here, there are 2 other tabs up here. There's URL, and that's where if someone says, hey, we have a web service, and that may not mean a lot to you, I'm not going to go over that, but if someone says we have a web service, you can paste that in here and add that layer. And likewise, this is very cool. If you happen to have a KML file, that's a Google Earth file, or a shape file in a zipped format, you can drag them onto here or browse for them, and it will populate the map with those data. So probably a lot of you have worked with Google Earth files in the past, or if you've done any GIS work, you're familiar with the shapefile format. If someone passes along one of those to you, you don't have to now send it to your GIS monkey. You can take that data set yourself and open it up in the map. Since I have about 10 minutes left, and I do want to leave a couple minutes for questions, let me give you a couple other greatest hits. So we've looked at the layer list tab, we've looked at the legend, we've looked at base maps. We have not looked at the swipe tool yet. Swipe tool allows us to say, what does data look like when we want to go past it? Like what's under this green spot here? We can zoom in and then swipe over and say, yes, it is some type of feature, some type of water feature behind a road here. So the swipe tool can be very helpful for looking at multiple sets of data where you want to make some type of comparison. We have a measuring tool. We can look at area in acres if we want to. We can, draw a box and see that we've looked at a fairly large area right there. Likewise, we can use a measuring stick to get a area on the ground in miles. Very helpful stuff. Let's clear that off. If you want to mark up something, you want to make a map for someone, you want to put a pinpoint on the area right here that's in question, we can do that. You can choose, all these wonderful cartographic things, so you can make a push pin and tag that up there, etc. You can draw straight lines, polylines, you can put arrows on as a Thanksgiving reference, circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one explaining what each one was to be used as evidence against us. That's Arlo Guthrie reference there if you didn't catch it. Moving on here, we can make bookmarks. So if you've zoomed to a certain extent, you've added data layers you want, and you want to come back and look at that again, you can add one here. You can, I made one earlier called High. If I click on it, we're zooming to a different extent. We can also save a session. So the bookmark works within sessions. Let's say you want to bookmark an area you're working on, Mattapoisett, one in Wareham, and one somewhere. Once want to zip between them, you can make bookmarks within each one. If you actually want to send this map to a colleague, you would type in a name here, click save, and then it will save a little JSON file. And you then would send that file to a colleague or store it on your desktop or whatever it is you want. When you open it up again, you'll see the same map that you saw earlier before, when you closed out your previous session. We have a print tool that actually has a lot of pretty cool features built into it. So you can say, I want a map that's 11 by 14. I want it to be vertical, etc. I want it to be a PDF, or I want it to be a JPEG, etc. And then importantly, we also have an about and help section up here. So some of your questions can be answered, but the majority of the help documentation is going to come from right here, data viewer help. And we have a very extensive web page that we developed that really goes in depth about exactly how every single part of MORIS works, how to use it properly, what can trip you up, how to use each of the functions. And there are several of them on here that I haven't gone over simply due to our lack of time here. I'd love to be able to talk about MORIS for the next hour, but that's not necessary. I think when you open up MORIS yourself and start poking around and come up with any questions, you can come back to me with them. You can look at the help documentation here. And certainly, as we've alluded to before, bugs, I'd love to hear about them. If there are data layers that you know of that aren't present, that you know would be helpful to the work you do, let us know about them. There may be a way we can either create them or find them to include in here. We want this tool to be useful for people like yourselves. And because, like I said, this is a really well done help documentation. This has been reviewed by our outreach team. I think that if you follow these instructions, you can more or less, the world is your oyster with these here. But going back, I'm sorry, I just heard something from the downstairs. That was not one of you. That was my wife talking here. So, here is MORIS, and it's something we've designed to be as user-friendly and powerful as possible. I think we've struck the right balance on it. And as I said, it's a fairly new product, so we're always looking for feedback about how we can make it better. We have about 5 minutes left. Are there any questions that I can answer for anyone?
I'm overwhelmed.
Okay, no need to be overwhelmed. Take it one step at a time. And, like most people will do, if they want to build a map, go down here, type in the search box what type of data you're interested. You can likewise type in locations here. I can type in my street address here, if I can spell it correctly. And it will automatically populate to that. And there I am in my house right there. So that's a way you can zoom to places. Poke around, explore it, have fun with it. I guess a big question is this type of tool helpful for you?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this allows us non-GIS experts, unlike yourself, to do some of the things that, it's just a one-stop shop. So we don't have to go to 3 or 4 or 5 different viewers. And, the mapping is great. You get to, some of those other viewers, you don't have those options to map and it doesn't look professional. So I've been really impressed with the product so far.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you, Sam. And I almost called you Dave there, even though I was looking right there.
That's all right.
19 years of Dave.
It's probably going to take me another 20 years, but I'll get there.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions?
I mean, I think I might have heard of it. I've never seen any of it before, to tell you the truth, but it's very impressive.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Behold the wonder. Amaze your friends and family. All right. So if there are no other questions,
Confuse the enemy.
I'm going to sign off here. I have another meeting starting up in about 3 minutes here. By all means, though, if you do have any questions or comments, it's easy to get in touch with me. You can either ask Sam or you can go down to the bottom of the MORIS webpage and get a link to my email down there. We can help you out just as soon as we possibly can. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Happy
you.
using MORIS, and have a great afternoon or morning, I should say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye everyone.